Jerusalem. My name is Aaron, the director of Canada House here in Jerusalem. As we approach Shavuot, there is so much to think and to ponder this great festival, the Festival of Pentecost, as we call it in Greek. I wanted to share a few thoughts. You may have heard these before in some of my presentations, but they are very applicable once again to remind ourselves. The Jewish people have a tradition that is that Shavuot, God appeared to them at Mount Sinai and he gave them the Torah. This comes from Exodus 19. And what was the purpose of the Exodus? It wasn't to get a group of Hebrew slaves into the land of Israel, the promised land, because if that was the actual purpose, then God would have given Moses better directions. He would have just said, Moses, when you get the people out of Egypt, turn left, and when you get to the Mediterranean, turn right. You can't miss it, left, right. The actual purpose was for the children of Israel to meet the Lord for the first time, to become a kingdom of priests, to make God king, to accept his rulership and his reign, and become the lights to the nations. And how would they become the lights to the nations? Because they would actually have the Lord living amongst them, and they would have his guidance and his instruction. Moses calls the Torah, that's actually what that word means, the guidance and the instruction, that Moses says to Israel, the Torah that you have is unlike any other nation. No one else has a Torah like you. And that's actually going to be attractive to the nations. And so the purpose of the Exodus is to get the people of God to Mount Sinai to receive his instructions. So why did it take 50 days to do so? What was the problem? Why couldn't we just get straight to Mount Sinai? And so we read in Exodus 19 that in the third month, the sons of Israel had gone out from the land of Egypt. On that very day, they camped in the wilderness. They had set out from Rephidim, and they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and they camped in the wilderness. And there Israel camped in front of the mountain. And in verse 2 of Exodus 19, there seems to be something that's a little superfluous. It actually says Israel camped twice. Why would it say such a thing? Why does it say that? Upon closer inspection, we discover that these verbs to camp, the first one's in plural and the second one is in the singular. Let me read it in Hebrew for you and then do a translation. V'yisu meRephidim, they came out and traveled from Rephidim. V'yavo b'midbar Sinai, and they came to the wilderness or the desert of Sinai. V'yachanu b'midbar, and they camped in the desert. V'yachan sham Israel, and there camped Israel. So yachanu b'midbar, they camped, is in plural, and immediately it says v'yachan, that's to camp singular. Israel camped. They camped, then Israel camped. Why does it say it like this? When doing a bit of Jewish exegesis, the Jewish sages note that whenever they left Egypt, every verb to camp is always in the plural. They left Egypt and they camped in the desert, and they journeyed to this spring or to this spring, and they made camp. And again, they camped at Mount Sinai. But then something else happened. Immediately, they camped singular. They camped as one. The sages would say they finally were united. When they had left Egypt, the Israelites had grumbled and they complained, they argued about whose camel was treading on whose camel and where they would pitch their tents and their sharing of water resources and food, constant squabbling. But then they finally got themselves together and they were united people when they were before Mount Sinai. And it's unity that attracts the divine. That when people are united, God loves to dwell with them. We see this in the Gospel of John when Jesus is praying for his disciples. He says, Father, may they be one as you and I are one. And when they're one, then the Father and I will come and we'll make our home with you. So John 14. So what is unity? Unity isn't theological. Unity isn't 1, 2, 3, everybody think like me. Unity is actually something more, it's practical. It's a behavior. And we can see this in the epistle to the Colossians, when Paul writes to the Colossians in chapter 3, in verse 12, he says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved. It's great to be loved by God, but it's also a command. We are to be a holy people. Well, how are we supposed to be holy? Yes, the Lord makes us holy, but how do we keep ourselves holy? Well, we clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Now, compassion, kindness, humility, these are not theological concepts. These are behaviors. You behave with compassion. You are kind with each other. You are gentle and polite and patient. Bear with each other, that's a behavior. Forgive one another, it's definitely a behavior. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord has forgiven you. And I can be sure that all of us appreciate the Lord's forgiveness, and thus we should also appreciate each other as we forgive them. And over all these virtues, put on love, which is also an action, and it binds them all together in perfect unity. Unity is not theological. That's not to say that there are not some theological, non-negotiable theological things, like there's only one faith, one baptism, one Lord. There are not multiple gods. All roads do not lead to Rome. Jesus is the Messiah. Salvation is free and given to all. But in that, brothers and sisters, we have to be one, to journey life's wilderness together. We do it together when we can. Sit and dwell in unity. How pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity, says the psalmist. For there the Lord commands a blessing. And who would not want to be blessed by the Lord? Friends, have a fantastic Pentecost. Have a blessed Shavuot. I hope your families are healthy, happy, whole, and united. See you soon.